Ever since the fire, interest in Segundo Beach has been booming, but development has officially hit a geographic ceiling. The flat, easy-to-develop land is gone, and what remains is hilly and much more expensive to build on. Naturally, eyes are turning across the water to the Segundo Peninsula, but there's a massive divide in the vision for the land. On one side, you have folks like Raul Lopez, who envision a Palm Beach of California with luxury resorts and super yachts. On the other side, you have folks like Mayor Beacon, who sees the peninsula as the only viable way to expand the city's footprint without gutting its historic core. For a long time, the biggest hurdle was actually the state. CalDOT resisted touching the peninsula, citing the prohibitive cost of building infrastructure on the sandy ground and the need for an expensive bridge across the Segundo Channel. Instead, they pushed for a cheaper fix, a more circuitous route that would avoid the peninsula entirely. But that route would serve the city poorly, likely triggering a wave of unplanned, low-density sprawl towards the harbor. And that's precisely why local officials have fought for a more intentional route along the peninsula, as well as that signature bridge connection directly into downtown. But for years, the state wouldn't budge. But then, the tide suddenly turned, and Segundo Beach's fortunes seemed to turn around overnight. First, it was the unexpected funding for a new city hall. And now, the state has officially greenlit the budget for the Beacon Bridge and the Segundo Highway. This is huge for the city, but it's also a bit suspicious. Word is that someone's been lobbying the state very effectively on the city's behalf. It remains unknown who they are or why they want the peninsula developed so badly, but they clearly have the state's ear. And regardless of the motive, today marks the groundbreaking. We'll be building the bridge, highway, and interchange linking Segundo Beach directly to Verde Beach. And if you're excited to build some transportation infrastructure, hit the like button. And if you're more curious about that city hall, hit the like button for that too, and let me know what you're most excited about in the comments below. Or just leave an emoji representing connectivity for the sake of engagement. And without further ado, let's jump right in. I have been looking forward to today's build for a long time. We're going to be building a bunch of infrastructure that's going to fundamentally change the way it feels to be in Segundo Beach, changes its development potential, and really fundamentally alters the development patterns of the area. And the way that we're going to be doing that is by building massive transportation infrastructure that changes where development occurs. The first thing that we're going to be building is a bridge across the Segundo Channel. Now, this bridge is going to have to be fairly tall. And in fact, it's probably going to feel more southern than western. This is going to be the first of our builds that really kind of take a lot of influence from Florida. So we're going to be building a bridge that begins to elevate right here, goes up and over the channel, has enough clearance for all these ships that go over here, and then goes across to the Segundo Peninsula. And then once we get over here, we're going to have to find a way to get down to ground level, and we're going to have to probably create some unique infrastructure to make that possible. But first things first, let's build that Beacon Bridge. And the way that I want to do that is I want to intercept 8th Street right here and have it go up and over. And I think that we're going to start that right here. And now that we've got some space cleared, let's make our new road connection. We're going to use a medium road for this. Now, rather than teeing into 8th up here, I want to begin by actually elevating over the top of this road. So I'll begin by bumping this up 10 meters. And then I want to get this to the side of the hospital. And it has to be up about 42, maybe even 45 meters. This should do the trick. Now, the game's not going to want to play nicely with this, but I don't really care. We'll use anarchy here, no problem. Now, this should be enough height to get up and over all of these ships. But before we add the bridge section, I want to link into this road right here. And I basically want to center this on this road right here, or actually where this road will be. We're going to be widening this, so I'll get that started right now. And knowing that there's more density on this side of 8th, I won't move it in that direction. The other conflict there is we have our park back here, and I don't want to encroach upon that. So now I'll complex curve into the bridge, meeting up with this road that we will be adding back, and then we'll link in gently like that. Now, clearly I didn't go far enough with my eminent domain, so I'll go a bit further. Now I'm going to link up this road with this new arterial, and that will make all those buildings happy. Now, before we focus on the bridge, I want to fix this road right here before I forget about it. So I'll expand all the way down there. And honestly, I think I'm going to end up redoing these blocks manually a little bit later on in the video. Perfect. Now, before we make our way to the bridge, I'm going to use Move It to clean this up a little bit. And then I just want to make sure that the pillars underneath make sense. These ones are good. So are these ones. And these ones are a little bit off. Not the height of realism, but that will fix it right up for us. We're not going to worry too much about the slopes just yet. We do have network tools in the build, so I will be using that to make everything look absolutely perfect. But now let's get up and over the water, and I think I want to use this 4-lane truss arch bridge. And if I can, I want to do this without anarchy on, and that means that I need to go a little bit further with this normal 4-lane segment. Now I'll turn anarchy off, and it's a thing of beauty. I can make it right over the top. Now, I don't think that we want to go any further until we know where this highway is going to be coming in. So I'm going to focus on cleanup over here. And again, for that, we're going to be using the network tools. And what I want to do is grab this node here and slope down to probably about right here to begin. And what's so cool about this tool is you can see what the current slope is and what it will become. Now, right now, if I set this to be constant slope, I could get this to be 5.4%. I might want to ease in and out of this though, since it's a bridge, and then have more of that slope occur as we approach the bridge. I just feel like that looks a bit more natural. Oh my goodness, that is absolutely beautiful. I do think I might want to adjust the hump right here a bit, and we've got some stuff happening right here. And I purposely didn't do anything over here just yet because I feel like we need more height. And I think maybe I'll grab both of these nodes and pull them up to here. And now that we have appropriate clearance underneath this segment, I will slope from here back to here using a straight slope, taking this from 11.9% to 1.7 consistently all the way across. That is a thing of beauty. Now, there is a little bit of jank right here, and I'm guessing that is because of Move It. So I'm going to grab this segment and Control H it to this node. That didn't fix it. How about this one? And you know, I could have redrawn that in, but I think it's just fine. One last bit of slopey, and I think that we should be good. And I just couldn't help myself. I had to keep going, and I think that it looks absolutely outstanding. Now, we're not done right here. There's still that weird hump, and I'm really concerned about this, maybe more than I should be. I'm gonna go back to the drawing board one more time on this, just because I want it to be perfect. You know, and I always say don't let perfect be the enemy of good, but in this case, I think that it made sense and it looks a lot better. But we're not done here. I want to find a way to connect up with Kennedy Street right here. So Kennedy Street is a major arterial couplet, and right now with what we've done, if you were heading this way towards downtown, you could get over the bridge. But if you were leaving downtown, you'd have to loop around back here, and I don't want that movement to happen. So what we're gonna do is add a looping movement right here so that you could still access the bridge from Kennedy Street. And the slope here is terrible, so I'm going to use the network tools again. And we'll take that to 6.3%, which is pretty reasonable. Then I'll use anarchy to clean everything up. Then I want to focus on a little bit of lane math. So we'll add a lane right here so you can exit towards the bridge. I'll remove this signal right here, these crossings. And it's telling me this crossing will be here no matter what. I don't care how you feel about it. I don't give up easily. And removing that crosswalk seems to have done the trick. And honestly, I kind of like the way that the highway segment looks right here. I don't want people walking up here anyway. And because we're into over-engineering right now, I'm going to over-engineer even more. We'll give a free right. And then again, fix our lane math. Now, this is a really ugly connection, and I think that we can clean some of this up by getting rid of those unsafe movements and the U-turns, and then movements that don't make a lot of sense. But I'll also use Move It just to clean things up a little bit. That is looking much better in my opinion. Now we can resume things. I want to round things out by cleaning up some of the landscaping around here. And then of course we have to make this 8th Street. I should also, before I forget, go through here and remove all these traffic signals. That's an important step from a roadway hierarchy standpoint. This is an arterial. All the roads that are connecting in here are local roads, and we wouldn't want to give them priority. Not unless there are major traffic concerns. So with the Beacon Bridge in place, let's move on to building the Segunda Highway and Fuego interchange. Now, this highway connection is going to be absolutely massive. We're going to basically be linking from over here all the way to the edge of the map. and there's a bit of terrain that we're gonna have to deal with. Now, all the way along the peninsula, things are relatively flat, and I think my goal is going to be to keep things closer to the bay so we preserve those sea views for developable properties. And it should be fairly simple. We'll just kind of hug back here until we get over here, and you can start to see that we've got some terrain challenges. So we'll probably have to sweep back around at some point before we get to this area. And this is when things get really challenging. You can see that we run out of space. So we're gonna have to cut back across and find a way up here and then link up with this highway. Once we find this highway, we're gonna create an interchange and then upgrade this to have 4 lanes. I'm also noticing a whole bunch of train backups, so we're probably gonna need to untangle that as well a little bit later on in the video. Bonus, train fixes, awesome. But first things first, we're gonna do something fairly controversial and delete the sand. And just as a map creator, I feel a little bit uncomfortable with that because that was a lot of work. But here's the thing, we're gonna redo all the sand down the line, make it look a ton better, and that was kind of messy in my opinion. So let's begin with the highway. And what I'm thinking is we are going to go with a bidirectional 2-lane one-way highway. We'll use our parallel mode and probably have 1 unit separation in between. I'm gonna begin it right here, but I want both sides of the highway to be the exact same height. And because of that, we grade. And I think that 60 will be wide enough for both. And indeed, it's basically perfect. So I'll send that perfectly straight right here. And then along the rest of the peninsula, I want to do the exact same thing. Keep the road as straight as possible while still maximizing our development potential. So we will have a couple of curves. We're going to keep them relatively gentle if we can. Now, I think what I'm going to do right here is basically stay behind these hills, maybe even cutting into them just a little bit. And then we're going to sweep around these hills. So that is where we will get towards the coast right over here. You know, maybe I put a little bit too much thought into this road, but I feel like it looks really natural and leaves us with a whole bunch of developable space. And as we develop around it, I think it's going to feel really, really, really good. But now we get into the more challenging terrain. Down here, we end up with some really narrow sections and we have to cross the railroad track and connect up with our existing highway. And that is going to be considerably more challenging, but totally doable. What I'm thinking is we are going to hug the coastline down here, kind of completely switching what we were doing before. And then even though it seems like this is probably the logical spot to link up, I think that the terrain difference between this valley right here and the highway is just too much. I'm thinking that we're going to try to cut right here and go underneath the railroad track right here and then have our interchange closer to this location, working with the terrain that we have right here. And just like we have been doing, we are going to grade everything out. Before I do anything else with the highway, I'm going to get underneath the train track. And again, that's going to be right here. And that's 4.5%, which is honestly incredibly reasonable for a highway. And then we're going from 63 meters over here to about 49 over here. That is a 1.3% grade if we stretch it out. So that should be very, very simple. And the trick here was just having the right tools. So I began with the complex curve so I could follow the terrain. Then I used the curved road tool so I can make a nice gentle connection into the existing highway segment here. And you might have noticed I wasn't really sure where this highway was going to go and I overgraded. One of the reasons I was unsure is I was unsure of the difference between this height right here and the highway. And this is actually quite considerable. This is 83.5 meters. The highway right here is a little under 70, and over here it's as low as 60. So I think we're gonna have to sweep back around here and then have a few legs coming off. But before we do any of that, we have to upgrade the highway. And I was gonna delete this, but I really don't want to. This is existing. They wouldn't redo this. What they would probably do is add to this. We would get another lane added to this. Now, I just did something a little bit tricky. Basically, I used the parallel tool with continuous and I went right over the top of the existing road. If you do short segments and then you back all the way out of the tool and do that repeatedly, you can go over the top of the existing roads and follow it in parallel. If you try to go too far though, you will corrupt your nodes and do lots of crazy stuff. So make sure you're only doing short segments each time. But the net result is a road that is completely parallel to the other road, which is what I wanted to have happen. Now the priority here is going to be taking this road and turning it into this one. And then we'll need to interchange it to connect up with this segment going towards the harbor. But before we do that, I am going to use the network tools right here. And since we're bringing this to interstate standards, I feel like we need to make sure that the grades make sense. So I'll make those two nodes the same, and then I will start here. And that, for instance, at 4.4% across the board seems to make a lot more sense to me. Do the same thing here. And here we get to 3.5. And now we're ready for this interchange. And the first thing I want to do is link up this highway to this one. And before we do that, we've got to do a bit of grading. So I think we probably want to take this back to about here, flatten this out. And then this would be 4.1% if we were just to cut through here. I think for a highway, you might. Oh, I really hate that. I really hate what I just did there. So I will attempt to repair that. And we're going to try something else. And you know, that won't be any better either. I'm having deep regrets. Deep regrets. Many deep regrets. We're going to just do what I was initially going to do. And we'll do some blasting. Okay, I think I can get behind that now. So now I want to upgrade this all the way back to here and get the directionality to be correct. Then we'll need to make our ramps in. Now, before we make the interchange, I want to use the network tools one more time and clean things up right there. And the whole reason I decided to do that is I think we might actually want to send this underneath. That looks much more realistic to me. Though with the bridge segment, I think we would probably try to get that bend out. Yeah, I think that is much, much, much better. Now I want to back the foggy highway up a little ways and start to add some lanes. We'll do our easiest ramp, which will be right here. The secondary one will be right here. I just want to go underneath this highway with anarchy off and then make sure that we're on the ground here. I'll upgrade this to have more lanes and then make our nice sweeping connections in. The first one's going to be right here. I'm probably going to want to make this one a little bit further back. And that's because I minimize the grade change if I start it up here. Then we'll get our movement right here coming from Verde Beach. And I don't see the percentage, but I don't think it's that bad. We may have to bridge this right here though. Then I'll convert this to have 2 lanes. This to be an asymmetric. And now we need to add our ramps going the opposite direction. I think for this one, we might actually try to use the terrain to our advantage and loop back around. And I'm realizing that's actually not going to work, but I have another plan. Basically, I'm going to extend this 3-lane segment all the way back here. Then we'll use the terrain to loop back around with our ramp. And then from here, I'll link up in this direction. And, you know, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this last movement. And I think it might just be upgrading this, adding the lanes down here, and then making our connection in way down here. So quite a bit of work to clean this up, but I do think that it looks okay. The first bit of cleanup will be using the network tools. I'll make that a clean 4.7% grade there. Same thing right here. Now let's get some of this lane math to be correct. Got an extra lane right here. Easy fix. Right here, we're arbitrarily ground leveling. We won't do that. We'll add some keys right here and probably right here as well, or maybe not. I'm going to slope right here because I can see that we have a fairly decent jump and that honestly did less than I was hoping. So maybe I'll take it back a bit further. And that right there looks a ton better. Basically, what I did to fix this was I adjusted this node height. I wanted it to be as reasonable as possible. And by doing that and making sure that we had enough clearance, and maybe we don't have enough, but it's close. By making sure that we have enough clearance here, we should be able to make everything else look really, really good. I think to resolve this, I'm going to bump this up a little ways and then slope from here. And now that's looking really, really, really good. But we've got a little bit of jank, and that can be resolved with Move It. And basically what I was trying to do right here is just make sure that the contour lines on both this ramp and this road are pretty even. And when you do that, you get rid of most of the visual corruption. You can also make really small adjustments that can make a huge difference. And then finish things up with just a little bit of terrain softening. And ultimately, after adjusting the angles and the heights, things are now looking pretty darn good. Now, I want this transition to feel a little bit more natural, and I think the issue here is it kind of abruptly loses lanes in both directions. I think we probably want to go a little bit further back for this lane so the merge isn't quite as abrupt. And then going in the opposite direction, we are going to want to have that acceleration lane for even longer. And I feel like that little bit of an offset makes a huge difference in making it look natural. And then finally, I feel like a couple of keys right here could make a big difference. So to make this look nice, I brought these all to the same height. And I'll grab that height and basically bring it up to the edge of the key. And then I like to slope from there. And that just kind of makes it seem like it's been built out of the hillside, which I think looks much nicer. I think I want to improve this movement as well. You can see it kind of bumps over, which doesn't make a lot of sense. That was probably pretty nitpicky, but I felt like where that merge was occurring was just not the most appropriate location. And moving that over even just a little bit makes a big difference. And then we have to merge in. So we'll be adding the lanes. And this is honestly going to go all the way back to Verde Beach. And that gets me thinking, maybe we just, for the visual sake, we'll do that all the way back to here. And then we lose that lane at the interchange. I decided to make one major modification right here. Basically, we had a bridge segment on both sides. I'm just thinking about all of the fill that we have from blasting through right here and blasting through right here. You got to do something with it. So we are bringing it over here. We're going to fill in this area and take one bridge and eliminate it. That saves a ton of money in both maintenance and construction costs. All we've got to do is move that dirt one time. And then finally, I just want to clean this area up right here, make sure that our merges make sense. I feel like this acceleration lane is maybe a bit longer than it needs to be. And this one, this deceleration lane, is not long enough. So I'll extend that to right there. And then before we move on from this area, I just want to go through and make sure that my grading is at least straight. And then obviously we remove all the trees where we've done grading. And I honestly think that that looks pretty outstanding. I'm pretty pleased with how that's turned out. So we've got one more piece of highway infrastructure to build, and that's going to be way down here. We need to make our connection into the bridge. I think for this connection across the Laguna Beach, I'm going to do something a little bit weird and not sure how you guys are going to feel about it. But basically, if we connect onto our bridge and look at the distance to our road, if we were just to make this connection as it is, that's almost 12%. That is way too steep. That is not at all reasonable. So what I'm going to do instead is go up and over the top, then loop back around and have a nice junction right into the highway. And if I take it out to here, I get down to a 5.5% grade, which seems pretty reasonable. And then to right here, I get 5.4. And then I'll connect right in at 3%. But we can't do this. We have to have a super node here. So we'll add a gigantic roundabout and then link up, remove the roundabout, and then find a natural termination point for this highway. Which I think will be something like this. Now, I don't want to get too far into building local roads, but I do want to have a nice connection right here. So I'm going to build just one. And this change has added a ton of capacity at this intersection, but we're going to do even more. I'm going to add a free right. And then on the highway, even though it's overkill right now, I'm going to add turn lanes right here and a free right. Then I'll extend this lane right here and this one right here. Now that is a crazy amount of capacity. Maybe depending on the uses we have down here, we'll add even more free rights to this intersection. Now we do have to do a little bit of cleanup. I feel like this is excessive in terms of ramping, and we would probably end up building this up. And I'll do a little bit of cleanup here, extending this out and then sloping right down. And then the last thing that we have to do is clean up some of the movements through here. We'll get rid of all the unsafe, then unnecessary, like this right-hand turn right here, this one right here. And then I added the U-turns back just in case. And that right there looks pretty darn good. There is one more thing I'm noticing though. I'm gonna wanna make sure that we don't have parking along this road. So I'll add a wide sidewalk because I don't wanna turn this into a highway. And that right there is a thing of beauty. And with that, the bridge, highway, and interchange are complete, and I just want to see how things are functioning. And look at all the traffic that's using this. That is honestly pretty impressive. Where they're coming from, equally impressive. It seems like it's basically everywhere. This thing was absolutely necessary. Traffic flow on the bridge and highway is pretty good, but everywhere in Segunda Beach leading up to there is not so hot. So at some point, we're probably going to want to untangle the traffic mess through here. And looking at the volumes is going to be an important part of that puzzle. And I'll be very curious to see if the volume picks up on 8th Street now that that bridge is there. Because right now it still kind of just looks like a collector. And with all that complete, let's do a little bit of cleanup. Now, as I see it, there's really 3 cleanup tasks. The first is cleaning up this series of blocks right here. I want to make sure that we do have some buildings here. I also want to clean up the other side of the bridge. I realize I didn't slope things out there, so that's a little bit of a mess. And then we're also going to want to clean up our rail backups, which are really extreme at this point. So starting out with this, in the real world, I don't think that we would have widened this road. We would have just taken the parking and had a narrower 4-lane road, but we don't have that road available to us, so we used eminent domain. So with that in mind, let's first do a little bit of site prep. I saw that there was a big jump right here. And I feel like the North American mixed Old Town style apartments are going to do well basically throughout this entire area. So I'll just run it all the way down. And then down here, we're just going to go with some row homes. I'm not super satisfied with what's happening right here. And because of that, I think it's platin time. So ideally, I would snap to the grid here. So I'll do that for the corners. Don't know if we have anything that's actually 3 wide. Looks like we do. And we'll go with something like that and see if we can get these to spawn in. We could. That is very, very nice. Now, while all of that's filling in, let's focus on the bridge. The one thing I noticed is that we've got a little bit of a hump right there. That is not ideal. Thankfully, we've got the network tools. And if I ease in and out of this, I should be able to get a much more natural looking slope here. And I think that that looks a little bit better. That is pretty good. And obviously I could slope to the center of the bridge, but I just don't want to risk breaking the bridge at all or having inappropriate heights. And if I would have been smart, Luca actually has another mod that gives you the ability to check your heights. But of course, I didn't add it into the build. Next time. This almost worked, but not quite. This looks pretty bad. So we're going to have to use platter once again. And the way that I'll handle this is snapping to the grid to get a 2x2 right here and right here. Then I'll let it spawn in, and then I'll do growables right here. And if I'm not mistaken, these growables should look just fine right here. They're going to end up looking similar to this. And if not, honestly, maybe I just forced the cause myself. And I picked a 1x3 left right there. And now this looks, well, it's still pretty janky, but it's much better than it could have been. So sometimes you've got to accept a little bit of imperfection. This will be our spot. And by that, I mean, we'll continue to play with it until it looks okay. Good enough for me. We need to do the exact same thing down here because we didn't end up with corner pieces. And the great thing about platter is you can tell if you'll get a corner piece. Right here, I can see that I've got those thick white lines on both sides. That means that I will spawn corners in, and then I can zone these ones in. And then I am going to roll the dice, use Move It to grab the platter parcel and the building, slide them both over. And at this point, you might just be wondering, why didn't I just plop all those by hand? Well, I could have. Maybe I should have. But it's okay. I think it looks pretty good. And now we have to untangle this rail mess. So this starts way over here on the way to Verde Beach, and it goes all the way over to here, past our harbor, basically all the way over to our rail depot. I think I'm going to try to just add extra track right here and see if that does the trick. This is Phil from the future, and I'm going to have to cut off Phil from the past because he's about to lead you down the wrong track. That's because I was under the impression that we had a capacity problem. Basically, we didn't have enough track space for all the trains that were going through the region. So I ended up using one of Tygon Rail Infrastructure Pack's quad tracks and basically doubled the capacity for the entire line. And it's a shame, this is a really cool part of the video. I even used the Network Tools mod to completely smooth out all the track and make it look absolutely outstanding. But here's the problem. Even after all of that, we have a whole bunch of rail traffic. And I sat and puzzled at this. I looked at it for a long time, probably another hour, until I figured out what the problem is. So I went to the edge over here and I realized that my routes are broken. You see this? Rather than connecting up to the outside connection, it's just kind of ending there. So at one point, I must have broken this. So I think that the real issue is I've got to grab this and link it up to the outside connection. That should solve all of my problems, or at least in theory. But I think that to make sure this is all going to work right, I'm going to delete this outside connection and then redraw it in. The other thing that I want to do is introduce outside traffic adjuster. This is a mod that I just introduced to Magnolia County as well to get rid of all of the dummy ship traffic. We're gonna do the exact same thing here. The ship traffic shouldn't be an issue, but we'll get rid of it anyway. But the train traffic is certainly an issue here. There's just a ton of it going back and forth between San Martin Obispo and Verde Beach, and it's gumming everything up. So I'm gonna set this to 0, which will get rid of all the dummy traffic. So any train traffic that we see is actually traffic that we've created. And now I'm gonna take the track and downgrade it back down to the double track. And as I replace this, I wanna make sure that I deselect this so that I don't turn this all into ground level track, because I'll adjust it all the way back to here. And now I'm honestly just gonna let it run for a few minutes to make sure that the trains don't get backed up once again. And after watching this for a few minutes, we don't have backups anymore, or at least we don't have the kinds of backups that we had before. Now we have Phil's a Dum Dum backups. Basically, I decided to go single track everywhere, and as a result, we have the trains backing up back there because there's no passing track over here. So basically, we have to wait until this train gets all the way down here and is able to turn around for the trains way back there to be able to move forward. So I'm gonna make one small adjustment right here. We are gonna double track all the way back to here. And then I'll have to fix this little bit of track right here. And that right there should ungum up our rail network, which is going to be really, really, really valuable because we were having all sorts of issues. And reasonably, it's the reason why we were never seeing trains in downtown. And after making that replacement, even though we'll still have a number of struggles in the downtown area, trains will no longer be one of them. And while Phil from the future's in here, I have one more bonus fix. This is one that I've been meaning to do for a while. Basically, King Leno released an updated version of the Imperial Heights apartments that has a more rational number of households. So I'm going to remove these and replace them with that asset. And much like the other one, this is the Imperial Heights apartments as well. This is much smaller though. And as I place these, you'll notice there's actually only 20 households in here, which is a much more rational number. And then what I think I want to do here is add a custom parking lot behind this. So I'll get rid of the grass, search for the invisible parking, just add that straight through here. And then I'll use the area bucket to fill this in. And then I'll add the grass back. And I'll add a few more of these over here. And in my opinion, that is a much more reasonable solution and a much more reasonable number of households. But the real win over here is that it's fixed traffic. Because ultimately having a couple hundred households over here is much more reasonable than having something like 1,400. So it's a win. The other thing that I did is a little bit of off-camera landscaping. I just added a whole bunch of trees to this area just to try to make it feel a little bit more complete, and I think it is a ton better. And with all of that complete, there's only one more thing left to do. That's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. I have a sneaking suspicion that this is going to be the most polarizing build in all of Saguna Beach history. And that's completely fine, and I completely expect it. The number of you are going to think to yourself, you know, you haven't been building any transit, you haven't been building any bike infrastructure, and you need to get to that. Stop building roads. And considering we just rebuilt the university and didn't incorporate any of those things into the build, I totally get it. And here's the thing. I plan on adding bike infrastructure. I plan on redoing and rethinking transit, but I want to do each of those in a really comprehensive way. I want to give them each their own episode, and that's why I'm not tackling it in a piecemeal way. And yet others will mourn the loss of the view of the rock from certain vantage points in Saguna Beach, and honestly, I completely understand that as well. But here's the thing. All development obstructs what was there before it. And the bridge is really no different in that regard. There will be winners and there will be losers. The losers are the people who live right here. The winners will be anyone in Verde Beach that wants to get to Saguna Beach or vice versa. They now have a really nice direct path straight into the heart of the city. But I think that there's one more set of winners. Basically, anyone who drives across this bridge, because you're going to get some really striking views that just didn't exist before the bridge was built. Look at the view that we get of the rock. It is really outstanding. Look at the bridge itself. Absolutely beautiful. We can look at the university, the harbor from over here. You can walk on this bridge and you can get some of the best views of downtown that you can possibly expect to see in this city. And this to me makes the city feel a ton bigger, a ton more urban, and it really opens up a lot of potential for the future. But ultimately, the biggest winner is whoever develops over here, because before the bridge, this just wasn't possible. And now this area is absolutely prime for future development. And that's where all of you come in. I have ideas about what I want to do over here, but I could be swayed. If you have some really interesting concepts, let me know what they are in the comments below. And be sure to look out for other good ideas and give them a thumbs up so they jump out to me. But any development over there will have to come in a future episode, because for today, we're going to leave it here. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. There's a million things that you could have been doing. You decided to hang out with me and build a gigantic bridge, and for that, I appreciate you, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.